The main story that has been reported is the storm. But there's another story. What ordinary people did when the storm hit. They aren't paratroopers or search and rescue professionals. They're neighbors. They're just regular folks ready and willing to do whatever they could do when their help was needed, when the neighbor was in trouble. And thanks to them, all the people of Puerto Rico, this recovery from Fiona is underway. Still, we have to do more. We have to ensure that when the next hurricane strikes, Puerto Rico is ready.
President Joe Biden and First Lady Dr. Jill Biden in Puerto Rico today, the first of their visits this week to communities ravaged by hurricanes just in the last few days. It has been 2 weeks since the island was hit hard by Hurricane Fiona. At least 25 people were killed there, and the power company says about 100,000 people are still today without power. The president this afternoon directed more than $60 million in funding from his bipartisan infrastructure law to strengthen Puerto Rico's flood walls and to create a new flood warning system to help residents prepare for future storms. On Wednesday, the Bidens will travel to Florida, where officials are still assessing the damage from Hurricane Ian just last week. Joining us now on all of this, White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain. Ron, in a hurricane, I guess you always wish you know exactly where it's going to land. And I know from working in Florida that isn't always the case. But there is some reporting that there's already some consternation on the ground in Lee County about evacuations there. Was the White House aware of evacuation orders, or is the White House involved in any of these after-action reports about where mandatory evacuations should have been issued?
So the decision to issue an evacuation order is a state and local decision. The administration's obviously responsible for the National Hurricane Center, which issues the weather reports. But look, I think our focus right now is on getting help and recovery to the folks hurt by Hurricane Ian. I think there'll be plenty of time afterwards to figure out what warnings were given when. Right now, we're doing everything we can to help the people who are still living in these conditions, particularly on the barrier islands, and to start the slow and difficult process of rebuilding Southwest Florida.
Ron, when you work in a White House, hurricanes are something you brace for and you gird for. These two storms were particularly brutal. How did it upend, what you all plan to be doing this month to respond to Ian and Fiona?
Well, Nicole, sadly, having these super intense hurricanes hit our country has become the rule, not the exception in recent years. And so we've been planning and preparing for the possibility that we'd have one or more of these hurricanes in the month of September and October at the hurricane season. We really had a surprisingly calm season in August, the first time, I think, since the 1990s where there were no named storms. And so I think we knew that eventually this would hit, and so we were prepared. FEMA pre-positioned literally millions of meals, millions of bottles of water in the areas where the storms were most likely to hit. They've been quick onto the scene to help the people who are dealing with this in Florida, throughout the state of Florida, in Puerto Rico, where the president was today. We're doing everything we can to get people, into shelters, or if they can stay where they are, get their power restored, get their water restored. We've seen tremendous progress in the past few days on that in Florida, progress over the past few weeks in Puerto Rico, but obviously a lot of work still remains to be done.
Ron, as the hurricane was hitting shore, hitting Florida, a weather person pointed out that the politics enter into the recovery effort pretty early on, and he cited the Chris Christie embrace with President Obama and how that hindered him politically in the analysis of many. What have the interactions with DeSantis been like, and can you characterize the president as pleasantly surprised or, holding on? I mean, can you take us in the room for those calls?
Yeah. Look, I think, first of all, I think it's the opposite of politics. I mean, whatever the political fallout was from the fact that a Republican governor worked with the Democratic president in response to Superstorm Sandy, that's the way it should be. And that's what we've also done here. The president's spoken to Governor DeSantis a number of times. He's spoken to Republican and Democratic local officials in Florida, mayors, county commissioners, kind of up and down the line. The FEMA is on the ground working with all these local elected officials to get the people the help they need. There are plenty of times to discuss the differences between Joe Biden and Ron DeSantis, but that is not around the subject of helping the people of Florida when they have been devastated by one of these super powerful storms that took dozens and dozens of lives, that has devastated entire swath of the state. The president's working with the governor and working with state and local officials to get the help these people need and to start to get this part of Florida back on its feet.
Ron, as a 2-hour broadcast, we have covered the hurricane recovery, and we're happy to get to talk to you about it. We've also covered Ron DeSantis' stunt and the investigative journalism that reveals that there was somebody working and spending taxpayer dollars for the state of Florida to move human beings from Texas to Massachusetts. Is there interest on the president's part in examining, having DOJ look at whether or not any federal laws were broken in that stunt?
Well, first of all, let me be clear. We don't tell DOJ what to investigate. That's not the way the Biden administration works. Obviously, the president was outraged by this stunt and by the fact that people were misled and flown across the country with all kinds of promises that weren't true. But right now, as I said, our principal focus in Florida is on helping the people of Florida who've been devastated by this storm and whose lives have been many people's lives have been lost, and others whose lives and well-beings have been torn asunder. And, that's what we are focused on in terms of our dealings with the state of Florida right now.